Choosing Home by ginnyrules27. Chapter 37. Harriet smiled as she sat with Sammy, both of them watching the younger kids frolicking by the lake. Ben had told Harriet about the gazebo, and CJ had immediately offered to watch Squeaky and Squirmy so she could have time with Sammy, roping Dizzy and Celia and Ryan in with her so she could have some friends with her. Harriet wasn't entirely sure she was happy with the knowing look on her little sister's face. Ever since she got out of her denial with Ryan and Harry got out of his with Uma, both of them had been almost determined to end Harriet's single status. Thank God Henry's watching them, she thought with a fond smile as she looked over at her fellow captain. Well, more like CJ's doing the watching with Ryan and Celia and Brooke while Henry sleeps and Dizzy stays with him in the shade. Claudine did say that Henry's been unable to sleep if he's not near water. Though when you've spent your life on a ship, sleeping on dry land feels strange. It was one of the reasons why she liked this gazebo. The feeling of the water of the lake lapping against the foundation of the gazebo reminded Harriet of the lost revenge. Being here with Sammy, it was like being home again. Our Don's been good to them, Sammy said, her soft voice breaking through Harriet's thoughts. Yeah, Harriet nodded, a small smile pulling at her lips. For all of them. I never thought I'd be able to hear my sister squeal in laughter while she enjoyed the sunshine. Though it's the main reason our redheads are hiding in the shade. Henry's still sunburnt from a few days ago, after all. Not all redheads, Sammy said, shaking her head slightly. Celia's with CJ and Ryan. She's keeping Brooke company. Oh, right. Just another thing Oridon's been good for. Brooke came out of her shell. It's a shame Jade's not here to see this, but Brooke's almost back to how she was before Lachlan dragged her to Freddy. Remember, we used to call her a CJ clone? Didn't help that they've both got blonde hair, Harriet said, smiling at the memory. Plus, CJ finally wound up with Ryan, if we're still talking about how Oridon's been good for people. Sammy chuckled as the brunette leaned over and kissed CJ's cheek. How many years did we joke that they were going to be the next Harry and Uma? Harriet shook her head. I'd like not to think about my little sister's love life, thank you very much. You know I had to tackle Henry to stop him from interrupting their date. Sammy smiled as she looked over at Harriet. So, while we're on the subject of mushy topics, are we ever going to talk about that kiss we shared during King Ben's coronation? Harriet froze, looking over at Sammy. What are you talking about? You forgot? Sammy asked, her voice soft as she closed the distance between her and Harriet. Maybe it's just been too long. Hopefully this can refresh your memory. Before Harriet could respond, Sammy's lips met hers in a tender kiss that sent a spark up Harriet's spine. It was probably everything she had dreamed about, well, minus their younger siblings being almost within shouting distance. Her eyes shut as Harriet eagerly returned the kiss, her brain forgetting the exact reason as to why Sammy was kissing her. All that mattered was that Sammy was kissing her. Crap! Sammy's kissing me! It's not safe! What if any of the angels see this? Sammy, we can't, Harriet murmured, her lips barely leaving Sammy's as brown eyes met blue. Why can't we? Sammy whispered. Cap'n, Freddy's dead. The other angels are across the bridge. Not to mention Brooke and Claudine are the decent sort. I didn't want... Oh, Sammy said softly as she sat back. Okay, we can just put that in the happened and never talk about it again drawer, then. No, Harriet said quickly, and she looked at Sammy, her lips still tingling from the kiss. I didn't want Freddy jumping on you the way he did Ryan. The kiss on Coronation Day was real, Sammy. I just never brought it up because I didn't want you or the twins getting hurt because of me. Cap'n, we were going to get hurt regardless, Sammy said, gently taking Harriet's hand. I'm your first mate. Not Uma's, not Mal's, but yours. Being a rat was putting a target on my back the minute I stepped off the ship. But there's nowhere I'd rather be than by your side. Why didn't you say anything before now? Harriet asked. Sammy brushed a strand of her ash blonde hair out of her eyes. I didn't know if you would want to talk about it.
Of course I would.
Oh, so you'd be okay if I'd gone up to you and said, "Hey, Cap'n, remember the day you knocked my brains out?" That had gone over well.
I probably would have jumped out my skin if you'd brought that up in front of the crew.
Harriet sighed, and Sammy gave her a sad smile. That was the point she was trying to make. To the blonde's surprise, though, Harriet chuckled slightly.
You know, that wasn't exactly how I imagined my first kiss with you would be like.
How? You imagined kissing me?
Uh-huh,
Harriet nodded. Sammy chuckled slightly, trying to tamp down her nerves at such a thought. And, how did you imagine kissing me? If you don't mind me asking, Cap'n.
Well, Harriet said, scooting so that she was closer to Sammy. First, I'd brush a strand of your beautiful ash blonde hair from your gorgeous blue eyes, since we'd have just finished sparring.
Of course. It'd be almost scandalous if we were doing anything else, Sammy whispered as her breath hitched. Harriet's thumb gently running over her lips. And then what? Harriet smiled, brushing an errant strand of hair from Sammy's face. It was almost as if the strand had heard the captain's words, as it had fallen while Harriet had been speaking.
I'd hold you against the mast, and gently place a kiss on your lips in congratulations, since you'd have beaten me in a match.
Impossible, Cap'n. You're a hook after all. You don't get beaten in a sparring match.
Hey, Smees are pretty skilled with the sword. Not to mention I trained you. It's entirely possible for you to beat me.
Harriet whispered before taking the bull by the horns and placing her lips on Sammy's. The spark of electricity ran through her veins once more, and Harriet smiled against Sammy's lips. Unbeknownst to either girl, Harriet's fingers began to run through Sammy's hair, though Sammy's fingers had begun doing the same to Harriet's hair. We should probably watch the kids, Sammy whispered as they broke, panting slightly from the lack of oxygen, and the spark still running through their veins.
Henry's got him,
Harriet whispered back to her. Normally she wouldn't be so derelict in her duty, but she was finally kissing her best mate. Sometimes love was the death of duty, but she didn't care so much at that point.
He's not that deep of a sleeper that he'd sleep through one of the kids needing something. Plus, we can hear them if there's an emergency.
Sammy chuckled as Harriet rested her forehead against hers. Never knew you'd let your duty slide, Captain.
Hey, I never dreamed that I'd be able to kiss you again.
Harriet sighed.
When you said you missed your brothers that day you arrived in Oridon, I thought you'd...
You thought I didn't feel the same? Sammy asked. Captain, Harriet, you're my captain. You're my best mate. I'd follow you to the ends of the earth if you asked me. It doesn't matter that I'm not on the Isle, even if that's home. I look at you, and I'm home. You were my lifeline when my mother died. You kept Squeaky and Squirmy safe when you came to Oridon, and I was on the Isle. I trusted you with my brothers, but I wouldn't have trusted you with all my heart if I didn't feel the same. Harriet smiled, and Sammy rested her head on her shoulder.
Sometimes it's hard to believe how much our lives have changed.
What do you mean? Sammy asked, looking at Harriet.
Harry and CJ actually get along. Freddie's gone,
Harriet said with a sigh.
CJ's with Ryan. Harry's with Uma. Hell, Henry's got a girlfriend. Actually, he's got a fiancé. Harry's not always trying to kill Gil.
I heard Gil got a job. Sammy chuckled.
Yeah, that was a shock.
Harriet nodded. It was definitely not expected when Gil said he'd gotten a job at Evie's Four Hearts, but apparently he was a decent sewer. Decent enough to make clothes that would hold up to the brutal treatment his older brothers put their clothes through. Plus, he'd made a small vest-type thing for Dude, the little dog that trailed around Deville. Carlos.
Is it as strange for you as it is for me, referring to Carlos and Evie by their first names?
Harriet asked Sammy. Sammy nodded. It's a little strange, but you said that Evie stood up against Freddy, armed with only smoke bombs when Freddy had his dagger? She helped keep my brothers safe. That definitely earned my using her first name in my book. Harriet nodded as her eyes fell back on CJ, splashing Ryan with a bit of lake water. The brunette retaliated by wrapping his arms around CJ's torso and holding her close, both of them bursting out into peals of laughter.
You look at me and you're home?
Harriet asked after a few minutes, looking back over at Sammy. Sammy flushed slightly. It was corny, but true. Yes, I look at you, and I'm home. Doesn't matter if we're off the aisle or on it. And yes, I miss my dad, and maybe I'm not truly home without him, but I've got you, and I've got my brothers. I'm as close to being home as I want to be right now. Harriet smiled and gently grabbed Sammy's hand, lacing her fingers through hers.
It's not corny. And I want you to be able to have your dad too, Sammy. Maybe once Ben's finished planning his wedding with Mal, he'll be able to get your dad off the aisle.
There's a difference between taking VKs off the aisle and taking adults off, Sammy sighed.
And what did your dad ever do that was villainous to deserve the aisle? Harriet asked. He was a loyal first mate to the captain. That was it. Your dad deserves to see the sun again, and I'll make it happen. You have my word.
Sammy smiled and lightly kissed Harriet on the lips. Finally! CJ! Harriet exclaimed, and Sammy looked over at the lake to see the younger girl grinning at them. Hey, you and Harry interrupted me and Rye, Harriet. Turnabout's fair play. CJ chuckled, brushing a bit of her own blonde hair out of her eyes.
What did you mean by finally? Harriet asked.
CJ chuckled. Please! We all grew up with you two flirting around one another. I think the only two who were more obvious with how much they liked each other were Harry and Duma.
Oh, and what about CJ's small crush on Jay? Ryan said, teasing his best friend and our flirtationship.
You swore you would never talk about that.
No, you swore. I did no such thing, Ryan said. She's never going to know that for a year I swore to kill Jay. I mean, how in the world could I compete with him? It didn't matter that he's 3 years older than us anyway.
CJ shook her head. It was more of a fascination than anything. Besides, I've got you, Rye. I don't need anything or anyone else.
Feeling the love this is,
Harriet teased. Oh, go and kiss your girlfriend, CJ teased back, smiling at the sight of her sister's happiness. Harriet had spent her life making sure that CJ and Harry were okay. It was time she had some happiness too. Sammy smiled and kissed Harriet's cheek. I mean, if CJ's going to be a captain one day, she's going to get used to giving orders.
First off, I believe my sister gave me the order, Harriet said as she looked over at her. And secondly, you missed.
Sammy smiled again as she heard that, and the two girls kissed once more, missing CJ's fond eye roll or the others' smiles at the sight.
Am I dreaming, or is Harriet kissing Sammy? Henry's voice asked, still groggy as he came out of his slumber.
Not a dream, Henry, Celia called over to him.
Okay, Henry said with a small smile. Congrats, Harriet. I'm happy for you.
Harriet couldn't help the almost face-splitting smile she had on her face. Thanks, Henry.
Hey, all that's left is to get Dustin to move on from flings to an actual relationship of substance.
Dustin will never change, Ryan said, shaking his head. You never know. Dizzy called out, Get him to Waradon, and he might. She might not have known Dustin personally, but she knew enough from the stories Celia and Haddie would tell her back on the Isle.
You know, why not get all the crew over to Waradon? Ryan asked. There's not much point in guarding our territory with the rats basically run the Isle now anyway. I'll talk to Mel about that, Henry nodded.
We'll talk to Mel about that,
Harriet corrected him, gesturing to herself and Sammy. This is a job for captains, after all. And you've got a wedding to plan, mister. I never get tired of hearing that, Henry grinned. My wedding.
Oh, go back to dreaming about Claudine. Ryan shook his head, shooting a teasing smile Henry's way. Henry smirked and stretched out, resting his hands behind his head. Why is he dreaming about Claudine? Squeaky asked. Sammy shook her head. Come on, Harriet. We should intervene before one of those kids start giving my brothers the facts of life.
Hey now, they're not Dustin. They know better.
Do they? Do they really?
Okay, Dizzy knows better, Harriet said as the two of them dove into the lake, grinning ear to ear.
End of chapter. Hi guys, hope you enjoyed that one. Oh, I like that one. That was so nice. Oh, Harriet and Sammy get to be happy. That's lovely. Oh, I'm really, really happy for them. Nicely done, Ginny. I like that chapter a lot. Very sweet. And them saying that they look at each other and find home. Oh. That's what I believe love is. I don't believe it makes you complete. I believe it helps you grow. And that's why people can feel complete when they fall in love. And yeah, just when you look at someone and they are your home, that's love to me. That's how I feel about my family, I believe. Anyway, you guys know the drill. Like, comment and subscribe and hit that bell to be notified whenever I upload a new video. Have a good day, night, or whatever time zone you're in. Bye my guys, gals and non-binary pals. I'll see you in another video. Take care.